This happened in 2019, in a town called Millhaven, Ohio. Nothing special about it. One main road, a shuttered movie theater, two churches that faced each other like they were in a silent argument. I was 24 and working nights at a gas station off Route 17 called Harper's Fuel and Market. My manager, Denise, used to joke that nothing good ever happened after midnight there. She wasn't wrong. It was late October. Cold rain had been falling since dusk, steady and fine, the kind that seeps into your clothes without you noticing. The station lights made everything outside look grey and flat. The asphalt glistened like oil. You could smell damp leaves and gasoline mixing in the air whenever the door opened. Business was slow. Rain does that. People pay at the pump, rush home, don't linger. By 11:30 p.m., I hadn't seen anyone in almost 40 minutes. The store hummed quietly. The refrigeration units buzzed. Somewhere in the back, the ice machine made a cracking sound like something snapping in half. I was behind the counter scrolling on my phone, half awake, when I heard it. Tap. Just once, soft, almost polite. I thought it might be rain hitting the glass differently. I didn't look up right away. Then it came again. Tap, tap. I raised my head. There was a man standing outside the front door. He was close, too close, close enough that his breath fogged the glass. The hood of his dark jacket was pulled forward, shadowing his face. I couldn't see his eyes. The overhead light flickered slightly above him, buzzing like it was tired. I gave him a small wave, pointed to the handle to show the door was unlocked. He didn't move. He just tapped again, slow, rhythmic. Tap, tap. I remember feeling embarrassed, like maybe he thought we were closed. So I walked around the counter and opened the door myself. "Hey," I said, "we're open." Cold air rushed in with him. It smelled like wet fabric and something metallic. He didn't respond. He stepped past me without brushing my shoulder, though it felt like he should have. His movements were steady, deliberate. He walked straight to the counter. I followed him back. Up close, I still couldn't see much of his face, just the lower half. Pale skin, stubble. His lips were slightly parted, like he was about to say something but forgot how. "Pack of Marlboro Reds," he said quietly. His voice didn't match him. It was softer than I expected, calm. I grabbed the cigarettes and set them down. He paid with cash, exact change. His fingers were long and cold when they brushed mine. I noticed his nails were clean. That detail sticks with me. Then he turned and walked out. I watched through the window. There were no cars in the lot, no headlights on the road, nothing at the pumps. He walked across the empty parking lot and onto the shoulder of Route 17. The rain didn't seem to bother him. He didn't hurry, just kept walking into the dark stretch of road. I told myself maybe he lived nearby. Still, something felt wrong. I couldn't explain it. It wasn't dramatic, just a quiet, steady discomfort, like a low hum in your ears that doesn't go away. An hour passed. Midnight came and went. I was stocking a shelf near the chips aisle when I heard it again. Tap. My stomach tightened before my brain caught up. Tap, tap. I walked slowly to the front of the store. He was back. Same hood, same stance, same fog against the glass. This time I hesitated before opening the door. "You okay?" I asked when I did. He didn't answer right away. His eyes were visible now, just barely. They looked unfocused, like he was staring past me instead of at me. "Down the road," he said finally. "What about it?" He stepped aside slightly and pointed toward the pumps. I followed his gesture and saw a red gas container sitting beside pump 3. I hadn't noticed it before. "Help," he said. I realized then that maybe English wasn't his first language, or maybe he was just nervous. "Your car's down the road?" I asked. He nodded once. I shouldn't have left the store unattended. That was policy. Denise drilled it into us during training. But it was raining. It was empty. It seemed harmless. He handed me a credit card. His hand lingered a second too long. We walked to the pump together. The rain soaked through my hoodie almost instantly. The air felt colder out there, heavier. I began filling the container. That's when I noticed how he stood. Not beside me. Behind me. Not close enough to touch. Just close enough that I could feel him without seeing him. Every time I shifted slightly, he adjusted to, staying just outside my peripheral vision. "You don't have far to walk?" I asked, mostly to break the silence. No response. The gas glugged into the container. The smell was sharp and thick. When it was full, I capped it and handed it to him. "Should be good," I said. I turned toward the store. His hand clamped around my arm, hard. My skin burned where he grabbed me. He started speaking quickly, not loud, just fast. The words tumbled over each other. I couldn't understand any of it. It didn't sound like a language I recognized. "Hey," I said, pulling back. "Let go." His grip tightened for a second longer. Then he shouted something over my shoulder. Not at me, past me. I turned instinctively and saw someone inside the store. Behind the counter, a man I had never seen before. He was shoving cartons of cigarettes, cash from the register, even lighters into a backpack. His movements were frantic but practiced. He looked up. Our eyes met. There was no surprise in his face, only calculation. He vaulted over the counter in one smooth motion. Something slammed into the side of my head. The world tilted. The rain stopped sounding like rain and started sounding like static. Then everything went dark. When I woke up, I was staring at the underside of the counter. The lights above me flickered weakly. One of them buzzed louder than the others. My mouth tasted like iron. For a few seconds, I couldn't remember where I was. Then the pain hit. It pulsed behind my right eye. Warm liquid trickled into my ear. I rolled onto my back. The door was open. Rain blew in across the tile floor. The store looked wrong, tilted, displaced. The chip rack near the entrance had been knocked over. The register drawer was hanging open like a broken jaw. I pushed myself up. The gas container was gone. They were gone. I called 911 with shaking hands. At the hospital, they told me I had a concussion and needed stitches. The police asked questions. I answered as best I could. "How many suspects?" "2. "You sure?" "Yes." But the way the officer looked at me made something twist in my stomach. The next day, they showed me the footage. There was the first man tapping at the door. There I was, waving him in. He bought cigarettes, left an hour later. He returned. I opened the door. We walked to the pump. Then the angle shifted to the interior camera. The counter area, empty. The door closed. Minutes passed. No one entered. I leaned closer to the screen. "Where is he?" I asked. The officer paused the footage. "You tell me." We watched again. On camera, I walked back into the store alone. Alone. I stepped behind the counter. Then I turned suddenly, like I'd heard something. I stared at the empty space near the entrance. My lips moved, like I was talking to someone. No one was there. The footage showed me stepping away from the counter, moving toward the aisle, bending slightly, as if picking something up. Then I stumbled backward violently. My head snapped to the side, and I collapsed. No second man, no hooded figure behind me, no one at the pumps. The gas container had never been there. The officer muted the video. "There's no sign of forced entry," he said. "No other prints, just yours." I couldn't speak. "What about the gun?" I asked. "What gun?" In his hand, the man behind the counter. He exchanged a glance with his partner. There was no firearm recovered. I tried to explain. The hood, the tapping, the voice, the hand on my arm. But even as I spoke, details slipped. I couldn't remember what his eyes looked like anymore, or if he'd actually nodded when I asked about the car. I still have the scar above my ear. Some nights when it rains, I wake up thinking I hear tapping at my bedroom window. Slow, rhythmic, tap, tap. I tell myself it's branches. I tell myself it's memory filling in gaps. But sometimes I wonder about the missing cash, about how the inventory showed thousands of dollars worth of cigarettes gone, about how my fingerprints were found on items scattered near the back door. I don't remember touching them, and I can't explain why. In the footage, just before I fall, I smile. Not a big smile, just a small one, like I'm looking at someone I recognize, or like I'm waiting for them to speak. The first time I saw him, he was already watching the cabin, not walking, not wandering, just standing there between the trees, like he'd been waiting for me to notice. It was October of 2021 when I rented the place. I remember because I'd just turned 32, and I told myself the trip was a reset. New job, new city, too many late nights, staring at my phone. I needed quiet. The listing said the cabin was in Blackridge Hollow, about 3 hours from my apartment in Cedar Vale. The photos showed tall pines, a narrow gravel road, and a porch with a wooden swing that looked like it creaked in a comforting way. The owner's name was Martin Kessler. His messages were polite but short, no small talk. When I arrived, it was early afternoon. The sky was pale and stretched thin behind the trees. The air smelled like damp leaves and old wood. The cabin sat alone at the end of the road, with only 2 other rentals scattered somewhere beyond the tree line. It felt private. Too private, maybe. I unlocked the door with the keypad and stepped inside. The place was clean but carried a faint smell underneath the pine cleaner. Not rotten, just stale, like the windows hadn't been opened in a while. I dropped my bag on the couch and walked through the rooms. One bedroom, small kitchen, bathroom with a mirror that seemed slightly warped around the edges. I told myself it was just old glass. Behind the cabin, the wood started immediately. No fence, no yard, just trees pressing close, their trunks dark and straight like pillars. I went outside with a bottle of water and sat on the porch swing. It groaned softly under my weight. The wind was barely there. The forest didn't make much noise. That's when I saw him. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, a darker shape among the trunks, but then it moved. A man stood about 30 yards into the trees. He wasn't hiding. He wasn't exactly walking either. He just stood there, angled slightly toward the cabin, toward me. He looked normal. Jeans, grey jacket, dark hair, nothing dramatic. He wasn't doing anything threatening, just watching. I raised a hand in an awkward half wave. He didn't wave back. After a few seconds, he turned and walked deeper into the woods. Not hurried, not lost, just steady steps until the trees swallowed him. I told myself he was staying in one of the other cabins. Maybe he liked hiking. Maybe I looked just as strange to him. Still, I went inside and locked the door. That night, I made pasta and opened a bottle of wine. I tried to relax. I put on a movie I'd already seen so I wouldn't have to focus too hard. Halfway through, I heard a faint sound, not a knock, more like a single, hollow chime. I muted the TV. There it was again, the doorbell. I didn't even know the place had one. My stomach tightened. I checked my phone. No service out here, but the Wi-Fi worked fine. I stood slowly and walked to the door. When I opened it, he was there. Closer now, I could see he looked around my age. His face was calm, almost friendly, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. "Hey," he said. His voice was steady. "Sorry to bother you. I think I'm lost. Been walking a while. Can't find my cabin." His breathing wasn't heavy. No sweat, no dirt on his shoes. "You're staying nearby?" I asked. "I think so," he said, and smiled again. "Can I use your phone? Just to check the address." Something about the way he said it made my chest feel tight. "Yeah, 1 second." I closed the door gently, not slamming it. I walked to the couch and grabbed my phone. When I opened the door again, he was gone. No footsteps on the gravel. No shape moving between the trees. Just empty porch, empty yard. The forest looked exactly the same as before. I stood there long enough for the cold air to crawl under my shirt. Then I locked the door. I barely slept. Every small sound felt sharper than it should have. The fridge clicking on the wood settling. Once I thought I heard something brush lightly against the side of the cabin. Not scratching, just brushing. In the morning, I convinced myself I'd overreacted. People get lost. People act weird sometimes. I made coffee and stepped onto the porch. The air felt colder than it had the day before. Thinner. I didn't even have time to take 2 sips before I saw him again. Same spot, same distance. Standing there. This time, I didn't wave. He tilted his head slightly, like he was studying me. Then he turned and walked the exact same path as before, stepping between the same trees. It looked practiced, like muscle memory. My hands started shaking so badly, I spilled coffee down the front of my shirt. I went inside and called my sister, Maura. The Wi-Fi calling barely held the connection. "You're just spooked," she said. "It's the woods. Everything feels weird out there." "I know," I said, but I kept glancing toward the door. Then the chime sounded again, clear, close. I froze mid-sentence. "Mara," I whispered. "He's here." "What?" "He's at the door. Don't open it." But I did. I don't know why. He stood there exactly as before. Same clothes, same expression. "Hey," he said. "Sorry, I'm lost. Been walking for hours." The exact same tone, the exact same wording. "You said that yesterday." I said before I could stop myself. His smile flickered, just for a second. "Can I use your phone? Just to check the address?" My heart felt like it was pressing into my throat. "No," I said, and shut the door. Not slammed, just closed. I locked it, then the deadbolt, then the chain. I stepped back. That's when I noticed something. The chain was already latched. I stared at it. I was sure I hadn't touched it that morning. I stood there, breathing too fast, trying to remember. Had I locked it earlier? Had I checked it without thinking? "Mara," I said into the phone, but the line had gone quiet. No static, just silence. I packed fast, clothes stuffed into my duffel without folding, laptop half sipped in. As I moved through the bedroom, I caught something in the mirror, a shape behind me. I spun around, nothing. But when I looked back at the mirror, I could have sworn the reflection lagged a half-second behind, like the room was catching up. "Stop," I muttered to myself. "You're tired." I grabbed my keys and headed for the front door. Before unlocking it, I looked through the peephole. Empty porch. I stepped outside, locked the door behind me, and hurried to my car. The gravel crunched too loudly under my shoes. The woods felt closer somehow. The air smelled metallic, like rain, even though the sky was clear. I threw my bag into the back seat and slid behind the wheel. As I reversed, the cabin came into view through the windshield. That's when I saw him. Inside, standing behind the front window, watching me. He wasn't smiling anymore. He just stood there in the dim light of the cabin, hands at his sides. The door I had locked seconds earlier, the chain I'd double-checked. He didn't move, didn't blink, just watched as I drove away. When I got home, I called Martin Kessler. He answered on the third ring. "There was a man inside the cabin," I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. A pause. "That's not possible," he said flatly. "I saw him." Another pause. Longer this time. "Are you sure," he asked slowly, "that you were alone the entire time?" The question hit harder than it should have. "What does that mean?" "You were the only guest booked this week," he said. "And there's no doorbell at that property." I didn't respond. "There's never been a doorbell," he repeated. I hung up. For a few days, I tried to let it go. Stress, lack of sleep. Maybe someone really had broken in, but something kept bothering me. 3 nights later, I checked the listing again. The photos had been updated. The cabin looked the same, but in one picture, taken from the porch facing the woods, there was a figure between the trees, small, almost blurred, standing at the exact distance where I'd first seen him, and on the porch swing, barely visible in the corner of the frame, someone was sitting, head turned toward the forest, wearing my jacket. I don't remember anyone taking that photo. I don't remember sitting that still. Sometimes I wonder if I ever left that cabin, or if part of me is still there, standing between the trees, waiting for the next guest to arrive, watching, not walking, just standing there until they notice. The first knock came 3 days after they left, and even now I can't explain why I opened the door. Maybe it was the uniform. Maybe it was the way he already seemed to know I was inside. This happened in 2022, in a quiet lakeside town called Marrow Bend. I was 30 at the time, crashing between freelance gigs and saying yes to anything that paid quickly. My cousin Lila mentioned her co-worker, Dana, needed someone to stay at her house for a week while she and her boyfriend were in Arizona. They had a dog, big shepherd mix. Sweet, she said. Easy money. I needed easy money. Dana lived on the edge of town, where the streetlights thinned out and the houses sat farther apart. Her place backed into a stretch of woods that smelled like wet bark and cold earth. The kind of woods that looked normal during the day but seemed to lean closer at night. When I first met her, she talked fast, showed me the kitchen, the thermostat, the spare towels. The dog, a heavy grey shepherd named Atlas, pressed against my legs and breathed hot, damp air onto my hands. His fur smelled faintly sour, like he'd rolled in something days ago and it never quite washed out. "You can eat whatever," Dana said, already halfway out the door. "And the lock's digital codes, 1419. It locks automatically after 30 seconds. That last part stuck with me. Automatically. The first 2 days were calm. Atlas followed me everywhere. If I sat on the couch, he lay across my feet. If I moved toward the bathroom, he stood up before I even reached the hallway. At night, he refused to sleep unless my bedroom door stayed open. The house made small noises after dark, not dramatic ones, just settling sounds. A soft tick in the walls, the fridge clicking on once, a low thud from somewhere above me, like someone had dropped a book upstairs. There was no upstairs. I told myself it was the heating system. On Monday evening, rain rolled in, not heavy, just steady enough to blur the windows and muffle the world outside. I was in the kitchen rinsing a mug when someone knocked. 3 clean taps. Atlas didn't bark. He just lifted his head slowly, ears forward. Through the peephole, I saw a man in a dark security uniform. Not a police officer. Private security. Maybe. Black jacket, stitched badge, cap pulled low. His face looked pale under the porch light. I opened the door halfway. "Evening," he said. His voice was calm, too calm, looking for a mark. "No mark here," I said. "You've got the wrong house." He studied my face for a second longer than necessary, not smiling, not frowning. "You live here." "I'm just house-sitting." The second the words left my mouth, I felt stupid. "For how long?" he asked. "Until Thursday." He nodded slowly, like that information mattered. "All right. Sorry to bother you." He stepped off the porch and walked into the rain. I watched through the side window. No car in the driveway, no headlights on the street. He just kept walking until the dark swallowed him. Atlas began to growl, then, low and steady, aimed at the door. I locked it and checked the keypad screen. It glowed faint blue. 1419. Later that night, I texted Dana about it. She replied with a shrug emoji. "Probably someone checking addresses. We get that sometimes." That didn't make sense. Who walks door to door in the rain without a vehicle? But I let it go. Tuesday felt different. The air inside the house seemed heavier, warmer, even though I hadn't touched the thermostat. There was a smell I couldn't place. Not rot, not exactly, just something stale, like a basement that hadn't been aired out in years. Atlas kept pacing between the front door and the hallway. He'd stop, stare at the keypad, then look at me. That night, I couldn't sleep. The digital lock made a soft mechanical whir every time it engaged. Around midnight, I heard it. Whir, click. My eyes snapped open. Maybe it was just the automatic lock resetting. Maybe I imagined it. I stayed in bed, listening. The house was silent. Atlas lay on the floor beside me, but his head was up, ears stiff. Then came the knock. Not loud, not aggressive. 3 taps. I didn't move at first. My heart felt thick in my chest, like it had to push through something. Atlas was already on his feet, teeth bared. The clock on my phone read 3:07 a.m. I walked down the hallway slowly, every board under my feet, sounding too loud. The living room was dark, except for the faint glow from the keypad. Atlas stood at the door, muscles tight, a deep rumble vibrating from his chest. I looked through the peephole. The same man stood there. This time he wasn't alone. Another man stood a step behind him, also in black. Their uniforms looked slightly different now. No badges, just blank patches where something might have been stitched before. The porch light flickered once. The first man leaned closer to the door, as if he could sense my eye on the other side. "Ma'am," he called softly. "We need to speak with Mark." My mouth felt dry. "There's no Mark here." A pause. "We know." The second man's head tilted slightly, like he was listening to something I couldn't hear. Atlas lunged at the door, barking so hard his body slammed against it. The sound exploded through the house. I flinched. The men didn't move. "Open the door," the first one said, not louder, just clearer. I stepped back. The keypad suddenly beeped. One sharp electronic chirp. I stared at it. The screen lit up. 4 blank spaces waiting for numbers. Atlas barked again, frantic now, claws scraping wood. Another beep. A single number appeared. My stomach dropped. I hadn't touched it. Another beep. For the first man never looked down. He kept his eyes level with mine through the peephole, like he could see straight through it. Another beep. My breath came shallow and quick. The room felt too small, too tight. Another beep. 9, the lock word. I grabbed the handle and twisted the deadbolt manually just as it tried to disengage. My hands slipped, slick with sweat. "Stop," I whispered. I don't know who I was talking to. The beeping stopped. Silence flooded the house. Atlas's barking cut off mid-growl. I looked down at him. He wasn't at the door anymore. He was standing halfway down the hallway, staring behind me. Slowly, I turned. The hallway light flickered once, then steadied. Nothing there. When I looked back at the door, the porch was empty. No men, no footsteps, no sound of retreating shoes on gravel. Just rain. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I sat on the couch with all the lights on and Atlas pressed against my side. Around dawn, I noticed something on the entry table. A small black card. I was sure it hadn't been there before. No logo, no name, just 4 numbers printed in white ink. Underneath, in smaller text, "We know you're inside." My throat tightened. I tried calling Dana, straight to voicemail. I walked through the house room by room, closets, bathroom, pantry. In the spare bedroom, the one Dana never showed me, the air felt colder. The window was slightly open, though I was sure I hadn't touched it. The screen hung loose on one side. On the carpet near the bed were faint muddy prints. large, boot-shaped, leading toward the hallway, but not back out. Atlas wouldn't step into that room. He stood at the threshold, whining softly. I don't remember packing my bag. I just remember sitting in my car with the engine running, staring at the house. The front door looked normal, closed, quiet. My phone buzzed. A text from Dana. "Why did you open the spare room?" My fingers went numb. "I didn't." I typed back. 3 dots appeared instantly. "You weren't supposed to go in there." Before I could reply, another message came. "Did they ask for Mark?" I stared at the screen. How would she know that? The next message made my chest feel hollow. "You weren't alone in the house, were you?" I looked up at the second-floor window. The curtain moved, just slightly, like someone had let it fall back into place. Atlas began barking inside. I never went back in. Later, when I tried to report it, the police said there was no record of private security in that area. No complaints, no break-ins. Dana and her boyfriend had apparently moved out 2 weeks before I agreed to stay. The utilities were scheduled to be shut off. No one could reach them. And here's the part I can't explain. Sometimes, when I wake up in the middle of the night, I hear that soft mechanical whir, click, like a lock disengaging. Last month, I found a black card tucked inside a book on my shelf. No envelope, no postage, just for numbers. Not 1419 this time. My current apartment's door code. And underneath, in the same small white letters, "We know you're still inside." I changed the code. It didn't matter. 2 nights ago, at exactly 3:07 a.m., there were 3 quiet taps on my door. Atlas has been dead for a year, but I still heard him growl. That's what I remember most clearly about that night in October 2016. The sound wasn't loud, it wasn't violent. It was soft and hollow, like someone testing the space between rooms with their knuckles. I was working the night shift at the Marlowe Inn in Pine Creek, Ohio. Small town, 2 gas stations, 1 diner that closed at 9. The kind of place where nothing happens unless it happens to you. My name's Daniel Mercer. Back then, I was 27 and picking up as many overnight shifts as I could. My sister Leah had just moved in with me after a bad breakup, and we were behind on rent. Nights paid an extra $1 an hour. That dollar mattered. The Marlowe Inn wasn't much. 2 floors, faded carpet that smelled faintly of stale cleaner and something damp underneath. The lobby lights buzzed constantly, one of them flickering in the corner near the vending machines. We had 6 cameras, 2 outside, 4 inside, and an old monitor behind the front desk that showed everything in grainy black and white. Most nights were quiet, painfully quiet. You could hear the ice machine breathe. That night, there were only 4 rooms occupied. At 12:17 a.m., I saw him on the camera before I saw him in person. He stood outside the front doors for a long time, just standing there, not knocking, not trying the handle. He was looking up at the second-floor windows like he was counting them. I almost didn't unlock the door, but rules were rules. If we were under 75% capacity, we took walk-ins. When he finally came inside, the cold came in with him. Not just outside air, something sharper, like metal, like old coins. He was tall, late 30s maybe, dark hoodie, jeans, stiff with dirt around the knees. His eyes were red, not drunk red, irritated red, like he hadn't slept in days. "I need a room," he said. His voice sounded scraped raw. "You got ID?" I asked. He slid it across the counter. The name read Victor Hale. The photo looked like him, but thinner, or maybe cleaner. Hard to say. When he paid, he didn't use a card. He used one of those prepaid debit cards, the kind you buy at grocery stores. His hands shook when he typed the PIN, not a tremor, more like his muscles were tired. "You're in 214, I told him. "Second floor." He didn't respond, just stared at the keycard like it confused him. Then he said something I didn't expect. "Do the doors here lock on their own?" "They latch automatically," I said. "But you can use the deadbolt from inside." He nodded slowly. "Good," he whispered. Not to me, to himself. He walked toward the stairs instead of the elevator. I watched him on the monitor until he disappeared down the second-floor hallway. For a while, everything was normal. I answered one call from a trucker asking about weekly rates. I wiped down the counter. I scrolled on my phone. Around 2 a.m., I started feeling that heavy, dull tiredness that sits behind your eyes. That's when I heard the first knock. Not from upstairs, from inside the wall behind me. 3 soft taps. I froze, held my breath. Nothing. Old buildings make noises. Pipes shift. Wood expands. I told myself that twice. Then the security monitor flickered, just for a second. When it came back, one of the hallway feeds was static. Camera 3, second floor, east corridor. The one near room 214. I leaned closer to the screen. The static cleared. The hallway was empty. But one of the maintenance doors at the end of the corridor was slightly open. That door is always locked. I'm sure of that. I don't remember deciding to go upstairs. I just remember standing in front of the door to the east corridor, my keyring cold in my palm. The hallway lights up there were dimmer than the lobby. One bulb flickered near the ice machine. The carpet felt softer, like it had absorbed years of spills and secrets. The maintenance door at the end of the hall was closed now. I walked toward it anyway. Halfway down the corridor, I saw him, Victor. He was standing in front of room 212, not his room. He wasn't knocking. He was leaning close to the door, his forehead almost touching it. "Listening, sir," I said. He turned slowly. Up close, his eyes looked worse. The whites weren't just red, they looked veined, like thin cracks in glass. "You can't stand there," I told him. "Guests are sleeping." He stared at me for a long time. Then he said, "They're not sleeping." The air felt heavier. "Please go back to your room," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "They're moving," he continued softly. Between the rooms, a door latch clicked somewhere down the hallway. I flinched. When I looked back at him, he was smiling, not wide, just enough. "I'll escort you back," I said. He didn't argue. He walked ahead of me to 214. When he opened the door, I caught a smell from inside. Metal, stronger this time, and something else. Wet drywall. He stepped inside but didn't close the door. Just stood there, staring at the wall opposite the bed. "Sir," I said. "They knock back," he whispered. I didn't ask what he meant. I pulled the door closed myself and stood there for a second, listening. Silence. I went back downstairs. Around 3:06 a.m., the phone rang. Room 209. It was a woman named Mrs. Cartwright. She and her husband were in town for a funeral. "There's someone outside our door," she said. Her voice trembled. "He's not knocking hard. He's just tapping, like he's checking if we're awake." My throat tightened. "Stay inside," I told her. "Lock the deadbolt." I already did. I hung up and started toward the stairs when the phone rang again. Room 212. A young guy, college age. "Someone's breathing outside my door," he said. "I can hear it through the crack." I didn't hesitate this time. I called the police. While waiting, I watched the hallway camera. Victor wasn't there. The corridor was empty. Then the feed glitched again. For half a second, I saw him standing directly in front of the camera, too close. His face filled the screen. His eyes were closed. Then static. When the image returned, the hallway was empty again. The police arrived within 10 minutes. We went upstairs together. Room 214's door was open. The window inside was shattered. Cold air poured in. But that wasn't what made my stomach drop. The wall opposite the bed was damaged, not smashed, not broken through, just thin. The wallpaper had peeled in strips, and behind it, the drywall was soft and crumbling. In several spots, small holes had been pressed into it, not punched, pressed, from the inside, as if someone had been pushing their fingers through, testing the space between rooms. One of the officers shined his flashlight into a hole. On the other side was insulation, and something dark. He reached in with a gloved hand and pulled out a piece of fabric, hotel curtain lining, from room 212. We checked 212. Their wall, the one shared with 214, had small dents in it too, circular, knuckle-sized. The guest swore he never touched it. Neither did the Cartwrights in 209. Victor was gone. The officers searched the woods behind the inn. No trace. Later, they ran the prepaid card information. It was linked to a stolen wallet from 3 counties over. No record of Victor Hale in state databases. No missing person. No prior arrests. Nothing. 2 weeks later, I quit. I couldn't handle the nights anymore. But here's the part I haven't told anyone. 3 days after it happened, Leah asked me something strange. "Did you move the dresser in your room?" she asked. "No," I said. "It's pushed against the wall," she told me. Like someone was trying to block something. I laughed it off. That night, I lay in bed staring at my own bedroom wall, the one that separates my room from the bathroom. At 2:14 a.m., I heard it. 3 soft taps. Not loud, not urgent, just testing. I held my breath. The tapping came again. From inside the wall, slow, patient, like someone on the other side wasn't trying to get in, just trying to see if I was still there. I never opened that wall. I never checked. But sometimes, when the house is quiet, I press my ear against it, and just for a second, I think I can hear breathing. Not loud, not desperate, just steady, waiting. March 2017, Granton, Oregon. Eli was supposed to be gone until Sunday. We weren't even close, just two grad students splitting rent on a narrow, aging duplex near the edge of town. He studied environmental science. I was in community college, still pretending I knew what I was doing with my life. We mostly stayed out of each other's way. That week though, the place felt different. Maybe it was the storm. Granton gets wind like nowhere else. It doesn't just blow. It leans on the house. It tests it. That Monday night, the windows trembled in their frames, like they were tired of holding on. The old gutters screamed every few minutes. Somewhere down the block, something metal kept slamming over and over. I didn't have class, no job shift, no plans. I spent most of the evening half watching videos, half scrolling my phone while the sky outside turned a weird green-gray. By 10:30 the power flickered twice. I remember thinking I should probably go to bed early. Instead, I stayed up. The wind got louder around 11, not steady. It came in long rising waves, like someone dragging something heavy across the roof. The house creaked in ways I hadn't heard before. Not the usual settling sounds. These were sharper, quick, like short footsteps in the attic. I muted the TV and listened. Nothing. Then the doorbell rang. Just once. Clear, normal. I didn't move at first. I just sat there, remote in my hand, waiting for it to ring again. It didn't. Who rings a doorbell in the middle of a storm like that? I checked my phone. 11:08 p.m. I walked to the front door slowly, feeling stupid for even being cautious. Through the peephole, all I could see was rain slanting sideways under the porch light. No silhouette, no movement. I opened it anyway. Wind shoved against the door so hard I had to brace myself. Rain hit my face like thrown gravel. The street was empty. The porch steps glistened. No car headlights, no footsteps running away. I stood there longer than I should have. The air smelled strange. Not just rain. Earthy, thick. Then another gust pushed hard enough that I had to slam the door shut. I locked it. Stood there a second. Maybe the wind hit the button. That's what I told myself. A few minutes later, something crashed in the backyard. Not small. Not a branch. Heavy. I froze again, then walked to the sliding glass door. Our patio furniture was tumbling across the yard like toys. The table had flipped. One of the chairs hit the fence and splintered. I swore under my breath and pulled on my shoes. Outside, the storm swallowed everything. Rain soaked through my hoodie instantly. I dragged the table against the back wall, shoved the chairs underneath it. My fingers were already numb. That's when I felt it. Not saw. Felt. That sense you get when someone's looking at you. I turned slowly. At the far end of the yard, near the tree line, someone was standing there, not moving, just a shape at first. The yard light barely reached that far, but I could see shoulders, a head tilted slightly, watching. My chest tightened. I took one step backward. The figure didn't move. Rain blurred everything. For a second, I wondered if I was just seeing shadows between branches. But then lightning flashed somewhere far off, and the outline sharpened. A person, tall arms hanging at their sides. I didn't shout. I didn't ask what they wanted. I just grabbed the last chair and ran inside, slamming the sliding door behind me and locking it. My hands were shaking so hard I fumbled the latch. When I looked back out, nothing. The yard was empty. I stood there dripping onto the floor, staring at the dark patch where the figure had been. My reflection stared back at me in the glass. I didn't go back to the couch right away. I walked through the house, checking the windows. Front door still locked. Kitchen window latched. Bathroom window secure. Everything normal. Still, I stayed downstairs. Around 1 in the morning, exhaustion started pulling at me. The storm hadn't let up, but it had settled into a steady roar. I grabbed a blanket and lay on the couch. The upstairs hallway always felt colder at night, and I didn't want to be up there alone. The last thing I remember before falling asleep was the porch light flickering on, off, on. Then darkness. I woke up because the house shook. Not just wind. Something thudded against the side of the building. I sat up too fast, disoriented. The room felt darker than it should have been. The power must have gone out. The air felt colder. I swung my legs off the couch. My feet landed in water, ice cold. I jerked them back instinctively, heart slamming into my ribs. There was a puddle spreading across the hardwood floor. not rain blowing in from under the door. This was thicker, muddy, and it wasn't just one puddle. There were several, trailing across the room. I leaned forward, squinting in the faint grey light filtering through the windows. Inside the wet patches were shoe prints, clear, defined. They came from the direction of the sliding door, and they passed within inches of where my head had been resting. I stood up slowly. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I kept wiping them on my jeans, even though they were dry. The footprints led toward the kitchen, then down the hallway, then upstairs. I don't remember deciding to follow them. I just did. Each step felt like stepping onto someone else's path. The house was too quiet. The storm had softened outside, or maybe I just couldn't hear it over my pulse. The prince went into Eli's room first. The door was half open. I pushed it gently. His bed was neatly made, desk cluttered like always, window closed, but the floor wet marks circled the bed, like someone had stood there for a while. Facing it, I swallowed. The prince then crossed the hall, toward my room. My stomach twisted. I hadn't gone upstairs before sleeping. I was sure of that. My door was closed, locked. I always locked it out of habit. The muddy prince stopped right in front of it. I stared at the knob. It looked normal. I reached out and touched it. Cold. The lock was still engaged. I opened the door slowly. Inside, nothing looked disturbed. Bed unmade from earlier. Closet door closed, window latched. But the air smelled wrong, wet soil, and something faintly metallic. I stepped inside, checking corners, behind the door, under the bed. Nothing. When I turned back toward the hallway, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. On the inside of my bedroom door, near the bottom, there was a smear, not a footprint, more like a handprint dragged sideways, as if someone had tested the door, or pushed against it. I backed out slowly and shut it again. That's when I realized something else. The footprints didn't continue downstairs. They ended at the top of the stairs. No returning trail, just gone. I stood there for a long time trying to make sense of that. Maybe they dried up. Maybe I missed something. Or maybe the thought felt stupid even forming. Maybe whoever left them never went back down. I locked myself in the bathroom and called the police. My voice didn't sound like mine. It sounded far away. 2 officers arrived 20 minutes later. By then the storm had nearly passed. The sky was pale and thin, like early dawn. They walked through the house with flashlights. They saw the footprints. They saw the smear on my door. But they didn't see anyone. No forced entry. The sliding door was unlocked. I must have forgotten. That's what I told them. They asked if anything was missing. I looked around. TV still there. Laptop on the table. Wallet in the kitchen drawer. Nothing gone. One of the officers, a woman maybe in her 30s, crouched near the couch. "These pass pretty close to you," she said. I nodded. She didn't say anything else, but the look she gave me lingered too long, as if she wanted to ask something. They checked the yard. No fresh tracks. The ground was too torn up from rain to tell. Before leaving, they asked about Eli. I said he was out of town. They exchanged a look. "Has he had any issues with anyone?" the male officer asked. I hesitated. Eli kept to himself, but he'd been tense lately, short. I'd overheard him arguing on the phone more than once. I told them I wasn't sure. After they left, the house felt worse, quieter, to still. Eli came back Sunday night. I didn't tell him everything at first, just mentioned the storm, the broken chair. But he noticed the scratch marks near the sliding door. He noticed the clean spot on my bedroom door. When I finally told him about the footprints, he didn't look surprised. That's what bothered me. He just sat there at the kitchen table, staring at nothing. Then he asked, very calmly, "They didn't take anything?" "No." He nodded slowly. "Did they say anything to you?" "No one said anything." He went quiet after that. Didn't ask follow-up questions. Didn't check his room. That night, I couldn't sleep again. Around 2 in the morning, I heard something soft, upstairs. Not footsteps, more like slow shifting, like someone adjusting their weight. I lay there frozen on the couch, staring at the dark staircase. Eli's door creaked open. I waited to hear him walk down. He didn't. Instead, I heard his voice, low, murmuring like he was talking to someone. But there was no response. Just his voice, pausing, listening, answering. After a few minutes, it stopped. I didn't go upstairs. I told myself I'd imagined it, just like the shape in the yard, just like the smell, just like the missing trail. The next morning, Eli was gone, his car still in the driveway, phone on his desk, bed neatly made, but he was gone. Police searched again. this time longer, this time more serious. They asked me more questions. Where had I been? Had we argued? Did he owe anyone money? I answered everything. But there's something I didn't tell them. The night before he disappeared, when I finally worked up the nerve to go upstairs, the hallway carpet was damp, not soaked, just faintly wet, and there were prints, bare footprints this time, leading from his bedroom, stopping right in front of mine. They didn't go inside, they just stopped there, like someone had stood there for a while, waiting. Sometimes I wonder if whoever came that stormy night wasn't looking for him. Sometimes I wonder if they were checking something, or someone. And sometimes, when I wake up and the house feels colder than it should, I can still smell that damp, metallic scent. It shows up out of nowhere, even now, even after I moved. Because here's the part I can't explain. The police never found mud inside the sliding door frame. No signs of forced entry, no water damage. They suggested stress, sleepwalking, memory gaps. I've started to wonder about that. There are nights I wake up standing in the hallway, barefoot, my feet dirty, and I don't remember getting out of bed. Sometimes the front door is unlocked in the morning. Sometimes the porch light is off when I know I left it on. And once, just once, I woke up on the couch, cold, with the faint smell of wet earth in the air, and a line of damp footprints drying on the floor, starting at the stairs, ending inches from my face. But in August of 2018, broke and running out of options in a small town called Millhaven, turning around wasn't something I could afford. After my divorce, I'd been crashing on my cousin Derek's couch for almost 3 months. Derek and I used to be close when we were kids, but adulthood had thinned that out. He had a girlfriend who didn't want me there. I could feel it every time I walked into the kitchen and the conversation stopped. So when I found the listing online, it felt like a lifeline. Room for rent, quiet home, no drama. The homeowner's name was Martin Hale. We spoke on the phone that night. His voice was soft, careful. He sounded older than the photo he'd sent me, late 30s, maybe early 40s. He said he lived alone, said he worked remote IT support, said he'd had roommates before but preferred someone quiet. I keep to myself, he told me. I expect the same. That suited me fine. 2 weeks later, I rented a small moving truck and drove out to the edge of town. The house sat at the end of a narrow gravel road, lined with dying pines. The air smelled dry and dusty, like old wood. Martin was waiting in the open garage when I pulled up. He lifted a hand in greeting, but didn't smile. Up close, he looked tired, not old, just worn. His eyes stayed on me a little too long when we shook hands. The inside of the house was smaller than I expected. Narrow hallway, low ceilings. The living room windows were covered with thick curtains even though it was midday. The air felt stale, like the place hadn't been opened up in years. You get used to the smell, Martin said, almost casually. I hadn't mentioned it. He showed me the spare bedroom at the end of the hall. Beige carpet, one window facing the backyard, a small closet. It's yours, he said. Something about the door caught my attention. The knob was slightly scratched around the base, like it had been replaced recently. I didn't think much of it at the time. We unloaded my stuff in near silence. Martin didn't make small talk. When I tried, his answers were short, clipped. After I returned the truck and came back around 8 p.m., the house felt different, darker. The only light in the living room came from the TV, flickering blue against the walls. Martin sat stiffly on the couch. "I'm heading to bed," I said. He nodded without looking at me. Inside my room, I set up my mattress and plugged in a small lamp. The bulb gave off a weak yellow glow. I walked over to lock the door out of habit. My hand froze on the knob. There was no lock on my side. I opened the door and leaned out into the hallway. The lock was on the outside. My chest tightened. "Martin," I called. He appeared at the end of the hall almost instantly. Too instantly. "Yeah, why does this door lock from the outside?" He looked at it like he'd never seen it before. "Huh," he muttered. "Didn't notice that. Must have been like that when I bought the place. You're sure?" "Yeah, I'll flip it around tomorrow." He said it so calmly that I felt embarrassed for asking. I shut the door and lay down. The house made small noises as it settled. Pipes ticking, wood creaking. A faint hum from somewhere in the walls. Around 2 a.m. I woke up. At first I didn't know why. Then I heard it. Slow footsteps in the kitchen. Not the casual shuffle of someone grabbing water. These were careful, measured, almost counting. I held my breath. The footsteps moved into the hallway. They stopped outside my door. I stared at the dark outline of it. Seconds passed. Then I saw the knob shift slightly. A soft metallic click echoed in the quiet. My stomach dropped so hard it felt like I'd missed a step on the stairs. He had locked it. I didn't move at first. I just listened. His breathing was faint through the wood, steady, calm. Then the footsteps walked away. I jumped out of bed and grabbed the handle. It wouldn't turn. The air in the room suddenly felt thinner. "Martin," I shouted. Silence. "Unlock this." Footsteps rushed back down the hallway. He stopped outside again. I could see his shadow under the crack of the door. "I just needed to know where you were," he said softly. "What?" "I don't sleep well with strangers in the house. You locked me in." He didn't respond for several seconds. Then the lock clicked open. I swung the door wide. He stood there in the dim hallway light, face pale, expression unreadable. "That's not normal," I said. My voice sounded thin. "You could have left," he replied. "You're not trapped." The way he said it made my skin crawl. "I'm leaving in the morning." He nodded once. "I understand," but his eyes didn't. I didn't sleep after that. I sat in the living room with the lights on, watching the hallway. Martin never came out again. At 8 a.m., I left to get another moving truck. The gravel crunched loudly under the tires as I pulled away. I kept checking the rearview mirror. The house looked smaller in daylight, less threatening. When I returned an hour later, the front door was unlocked. The house was silent. "Martin," I called. No answer. His bedroom door was open. The bed was stripped, closet empty, no computer, no clothes. The room smelled faintly metallic, like pennies. It didn't look lived in. It looked staged. A strange unease crept into my thoughts. Had there even been pictures on the walls yesterday? I couldn't remember. I shook it off and started hauling my boxes. 2 hours later, sweat soaked through my shirt. I had one last half-filled box from my kitchen supplies. As I stepped back inside to grab it, I felt it before I saw him. Martin was standing at the front door. I hadn't heard him come in. He wasn't breathing hard, wasn't sweaty, just there. "You're leaving fast," he said. "You said I could." His eyes moved slowly around the house. "You didn't sleep. That's your fault." He stepped aside. I carried the box out to the truck. My hands were trembling now, though I told myself it was just adrenaline. As I climbed into the back of the truck to stack it, Martin appeared behind me holding something. "The spare key. You forgot this," he said. I stared at it. I didn't remember him giving me one. "Oh, right." I took it. When I turned back around, his hand was already on the truck door. He pulled hard. The metal door dropped halfway before I slammed my shoulder against it. "What are you doing?" I yelled. His face didn't change. "You lock things when you're unsure," he said quietly. The words felt familiar. Hadn't I said something like that last night? I shoved the door upward and pushed him back. He stumbled but didn't fall. For a split second, I saw something in his expression. Not anger, not fear, recognition, like he knew me. Then he turned and walked toward the tree line behind the house. Not running, just walking. I stood there, frozen. The wind moved through the pines with a low hiss. For a moment, I thought I saw someone else between the trees, a shape, a person. But when I blinked, it was gone. I slammed the truck shut and drove. I never reported him. I never went back. Derek let me stay another month before I found a small studio apartment across town. Here's the part that bothers me. A few weeks later, I tried looking up the listing again. It was gone. The entire rental site showed no record of the address, so I searched property records. The house on Pine Hollow Road had been vacant for 3 years. No owner listed as Martin Hale. No utilities active. Nothing. I drove past it once, just to be sure. The gravel road was overgrown. The house looked abandoned, windows boarded, garage door rusted shut. It didn't look like a place someone had been living in 2 weeks earlier. And sometimes, late at night in my apartment, I wake up to the sound of a soft metallic click, not from my front door, from my bedroom. I keep telling myself it's the building settling. Old pipes, loose hardware. But last night, I got up to check. The lock on my bedroom door was on the outside. I stood there staring at it for a long time, trying to remember if it had always been that way. And for the life of me, I can't. I moved to Harrow's End in the fall of 2018, chasing quiet. That's what I told everyone. Anyway, after the divorce, after the late-night fights that echoed through thin apartment walls, I wanted distance, space, a place where no one could hear me think. The house sat at the end of Black Ridge Road, outside a small town in northern Idaho. Pine trees crowded the property line like they were trying to lean closer. The nearest neighbor was a long walk away. At night, there were no streetlights, just wind and trees and whatever lived in between. My name's Caleb Mercer. Back then, I'd just turned 34. I'd landed a remote IT job, which meant I could work from anywhere with Wi-Fi. When I found the listing for the house, it felt almost too perfect. Cheap rent, recently renovated, quiet area. The landlord, Ronan Hale, met me there the day I signed the lease. He was in his early 50s, tall and narrow, with careful movements, the kind of guy who smiled without showing teeth. His truck was parked in the gravel driveway, dark blue, mud dried along the sides. "You'll like it here," he'd said while unlocking the door. "Nobody bothers you out this way." He said it like a promise, or a warning. The first week went by fast. I unpacked my boxes, set up my desk near the front window, and bought a second-hand couch from a shop in town. The house had that faint smell older places get: wood, dust, something damp under the floorboards, but it wasn't terrible. Just lived in. The quiet was heavy, though not peaceful. Heavy. Sometimes I'd catch myself pausing mid-sentence during work calls, listening to nothing. The fridge hum, the wind pushing against the siding. Once, I could have sworn I heard footsteps on the porch, but when I checked, the boards were empty and dry. Then Ronan knocked for the first time. It was a Tuesday morning, grey sky, cold enough that my breath fogged the kitchen window while I made coffee. 3 steady knocks. Not loud, not urgent, just deliberate. When I opened the door, Ronan stood there smiling like we were old friends. "Just checking in," he said, "making sure everything's working." "It's fine," I told him. He didn't step inside, but he leaned slightly forward, like he was trying to see past me. "You settling in okay, Caleb?" "Yeah." He kept smiling. His eyes moved around the entryway, slow and careful, noticing things. I remember thinking it was strange he hadn't called first, but I told myself he was just being thorough. Maybe he had other properties nearby. After a minute, he nodded and left. I watched his truck disappear down the road. That night, I went for a walk. I wanted to see more of the area before winter set in. The sky turned purple early, and the air smelled like wet leaves and distant smoke. When I rounded the bend back toward my place, I saw a truck parked along the shoulder. Dark blue, mud dried along the sides. It wasn't in my driveway. It was about 50 yards down, partially hidden behind trees. No headlights, no engine noise. Empty. I slowed down. My stomach felt tight, like I'd missed a step on the stairs. I told myself there could be other trucks like that. It was a small town. Same models, same colors. But when I walked past, I saw the dent near the rear bumper. The one shaped like a crescent. I'd noticed it the day I moved in. I didn't run. I just walked faster. Inside, I locked the door, checked the windows, pulled the curtains. I stood in the dark living room for a long time, listening. Nothing. An hour later, the knock came again. Same rhythm. 3 steady knocks. When I looked through the peephole, Ronan was there, smiling. "Evening," he said when I opened it a crack. "Forgot to mention earlier, you hear pipes knocking at night. That's normal. Old system." "I didn't," I said. He tilted his head slightly. "Didn't what?" "Hear anything." His smile didn't change, but something behind it did. "Well," he said softly, "you might." That night, I didn't sleep much. Around 2:14 a.m., I woke up to a dull metallic sound, like something tapping against metal in a slow rhythm. Clang, clang. It wasn't loud, but in that kind of silence, it didn't need to be. I lay still, staring at the ceiling. The house felt colder than before. The air tasted metallic, like pennies. I told myself it was the pipes. Old system. I didn't go downstairs. The next few days blurred together. Work calls, coffee wind, that faint smell under the floorboards getting stronger, like damp earth after rain. And Ronan kept showing up. Not every day, just enough. Sometimes in the afternoon, once at dusk, always smiling, always some small excuse, checking the water pressure, making sure the heater was stable, dropping off an extra set of keys just in case. He never asked to come inside, until the night he did. It was close to midnight when the pounding started. Not 3 knocks this time, harder, urgent. My heart jumped so fast it made my vision pulse. I grabbed my phone and went downstairs. The living room was dark, except for the faint blue light from the router. Through the peephole, Ronan's face looked warped by the glass. "Caleb," he said through the door. "Open up. There's a gas alert." "I don't smell anything," I replied. "It's in the basement." My monitor went off. Monitor. He hadn't mentioned any monitor before. I'll call someone in the morning. You can't wait, he said, and his voice dropped. It's dangerous. When I cracked the door, he pushed lightly. Not enough to knock me down, just enough to step inside. He carried a black duffel bag. Where are your tools? I asked. He looked at me. They're in here. He walked toward the basement door like he'd lived there for years. I followed halfway down the stairs. The air grew colder with each step. The light bulb at the bottom flickered weakly. See, he said. You hear that? I didn't. Just my own breathing. Hold on, I said suddenly. I need my phone. He stopped moving. For a second, he didn't blink. Then he nodded. Of course. I climbed back up, hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped my phone. I grabbed my car keys. The duffel bag was still by the couch. I don't know why I opened it. Maybe I needed proof I wasn't imagining things. Inside, there weren't any wrenches, no pipes, no equipment. There were plastic zip ties, a roll of thick duct tape, a small bottle of something clear with no label, and gloves, black, rubber. I didn't think. I just ran. I heard his footsteps behind me as I slammed the front door open. I got into my car and drove without headlights for the first few seconds, tires spitting gravel. I didn't stop until I reached the 24-hour gas station near town. My hands wouldn't stop shaking when I called the sheriff. When deputies arrived at the house, Ronan was there, calm, confused. He told them I'd panicked over a maintenance check. There was no duffel bag. They searched his truck, the basement, the yard, nothing. No tape, no zip ties, no bottle. One of the deputies asked if I'd been drinking. I hadn't, but for a split second, I wondered if I had missed something. If I'd imagined it, the house, the smell, the metallic taste. In the end, they couldn't charge him with anything serious. Trespassing was murky. He owned the place. The only thing I managed was breaking the lease. I left within 2 days. Here's the part that bothers me. A week after I moved out, I realized something strange. I didn't have a copy of the lease anymore. I was sure I'd packed it. I was sure, but it wasn't in any of my boxes. And when I checked my email, the digital copy was gone too. Not in trash. Not archived. Gone. Sometimes I wake up at 2:14 a.m. Even now. Sometimes I smell that metallic scent in my apartment in Boise, even though there's no basement here. And sometimes I think about the basement in Harrow's End, about how I only went halfway down, about how I never actually saw what was at the bottom of those stairs. There's one more thing I haven't told anyone. When I was packing up to leave, I found something tucked behind the breaker panel in the hallway, a photograph of the living room, taken from the corner near the ceiling. You could see the couch, the front door, and me, standing there, looking straight up at whoever took it. I don't remember that picture being taken, and I don't remember looking up.